Right. Hello.
Hello, everybody.
We've kind of got two streams going on here, so we appreciate everybody joining us today. We'll also be on YouTube. I would say we're going to be mostly focused towards YouTube, but really excited to kind of be present on Instagram too, talking about these common themes that we've seen across different templates of, like, it's a topic of conversation very much so recently as we're talking about our work and the shifts that we're making, trauma to enlightenment. So if you want to just talk about that, we'll get kicked off.
Yeah, it's been a passion of mine, and from the time I was a little girl, actually studying religions. And I find that there are common themes among all these traditions. And when you find something that's common through that many templates, you're like, okay, that's a piece we should pull out and raise up to the next level. Right. So, as we've been moving into this space of magic, it's been cool to recognize, the things that have been gathered through the years in my different studies, right? And how they've impacted what became quantum therapeutics and what is evolving into how we're coming together in these sacred places.
Yeah. And it's also the partial of this is why we're doing this is that understanding of that piece exactly, that it is a culmination of so many different religions, cultures, traditions. And I think that a lot of people, we're just wanting to open that perspective up to that, because I think sometimes people can look at what we're doing and go, okay, enlightenment, spirituality, hoodoo, woodoo, and we just really have so much intention behind what we're doing that people don't really know about. Like, say, for instance, the, sacred circles we just started. Those are groups of 12, and people have asked about why 12. So why 12, Cherie?
Why 12? We have to recognize that, the great white wizard, Jesus, had 12 and himself, right? And covens are created of 12.
Yeah.
And the leader of that space. And
I was going to say, even in like Greek mythology, didn't they usually use 12?
It's always a 12, right? Which breaks down into, that 13 culminates in numerology wise, it's that 1. 13
means 1 in numerology.
Well, like when you break it down, right? Because you can break that down. You've got, and it's 1 times 1 equals 1.
Okay.
Right? You know what I mean?
The math ain't for me, but
Yeah, in numerology, it breaks down to that.
But I know, like, even in numerology, like that number 12 is like that wholeness, completeness. And so, that's something that.
And that comes into that like the triquetra, which I love, that power of 3, right?
Where did the triquetra stem from?
I love the triquetra. In Celtic, it's like the stages of life.
Okay.
Right? And specifically to women, it's maiden, mother,
crown,
and, the woman of wisdom, right?
Okay.
So it's those cycles of evolution in our spirituality and our physicalness.
Yeah. Okay. So but that came from the Celtic background. Have you seen that reflected in any other traditions?
Well, a lot use like the spirals and have those same kind of, I can't off the top of my head call up the symbol, but yes, I've witnessed that through all. And and it reflects in nature and our cycles of evolution and our spiritual evolution too, with the chakra development, right? So you're
saying those are part of that spiritual development because they help us to see things differently, or like that iconography that is similar across templates, like, say, for instance, the spirals or the triquetra or whatever it is, how does that help us to find this path of enlightenment, or what signals are those giving to us to learn from?
Well, I think that, like, the triquetra to me means there's a time and space for those opportunities for evolution.
Okay.
Right? And us being in motherhood, we're putting into practice everything we learned and casting it forward. And then as we move into like the space like where I am now, it's like, okay, what is the culmination of everything we've gained through all those years that we can share? So I think it's a very kind of indigenous crossover spiritual concept, right?
Even the spirals, like now that you got me thinking about those, we're going to Ireland in July, and some of these historic places have these major spirals, and where I've seen them as is that, representation of self-discovery. And, those have been in Native American culture. Like there's the woman that's standing there, and then it goes into this circular, like, picture.
Oh, that's one of my favorite symbols.
Yeah, and that's Native American, right?
Yeah, and it's got the spiral of
fertility.
Never-ending fertility.
Yes,
right? So it's that, from that pinpoint, almost like the labyrinth as well.
Yeah, right. So even like some of the stuff that we're doing, we'll say like, oh, spell, prayer, incantation, whatever you want that to be. And why do we say that? Like, what is? Because that is something that is similar across templates.
Right. So as recently, I've joined a coven, right? Just basically like, okay, like I've traveled with the indigenous, like that is something I have been very passionate about, and then studied all these religions. And I'm like, well, what are they bringing to the table?
Yeah.
Especially when you realize that all of our structure of our holidays and everything are based on those pagan, rituals. So as I stepped into that place, having grown up in Catholicism, I recognized the chalice, right? And I recognized the body and the blood and the incense and the candles, and was like, okay, how is this different? And the more I was researching that, the more I realized that even in those rituals of Catholicism, there's very specific incantations that they pull everybody together in.
Yeah.
Right? That is powerful.
Right.
You can feel it tingling in your body. And I'm like, okay, well, what's different, right? What makes a spell different? And as I was interacting with people, they're like, well, it's where you choose to pull the power from. And I'm like, why? Why do you why can't you pull, it's the power.
Yes. Just that connection to whatever anyone calls the divine higher spirit.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Well, like the
thing.
Right? That we're always trying to tap into.
Yes. So that's spirit, though. We're all trying to connect into spirit in some way is a good way to say that.
Yeah. And, in all traditions, we have guides, we have different access points, and, people are quite accepting of that. So why does this particular, right, quote, religion have to be choosing from a power of negativity or self?
Right.
Right? They're coming into a space of 12 to prevent that.
Right. It's that diversity in that space and balance.
And accountability. Like if somebody's coming into that and they're in an I, me, I space, right? The collective is not going to put their power behind that.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? And, the Master Jesus, same thing, right? He was coming together in those spaces and those incantations and those ceremonies and rituals with that specific group of 12 that he trusted their intentions.
And to magnify the energy that he had.
Yes.
So,
and he vetted them.
Yes, so they had their own powers too, essentially like the apostles.
The apostles.
But they had their own magic that he used to collectively bring them to a higher space and of teaching and healing.
And they were fueling his message.
Right.
Like that power to put it out there.
So you've seen that in the travels that you've been in, not just in the Bible from Catholicism and like
yeah. Like when you're in the indigenous right now, it's cool. Like when I was in the Waiata, it was very cool that they had kind of a tribune of males and females of equal number.
Okay, interesting.
Right? So if the males, like, you know, in their direction and their ways of processing come forward with a solution to a problem, and the women are like,
that's not going to work.
Back to the table, right? It was very honored, and I witnessed that happening because they were in that very spiritual space of the collective, right? Operating on that space of collective.
Okay.
Now, it is interesting, too. Sitting with the grandmothers, I was very intrigued, and we were very drawn to one another. And I asked them, so what brings you to the space of becoming a grandmother? And no one knew the answer to that.
That's interesting.
Here we would know. I'm, you know, my goal is to be that, you know, in the United States, it would be like, you know, no one knew the answer.
Well, that's even interesting. Like you know, we talk a lot about the words we choose and them being so important. And then at the same time, we're saying that they are fluid in their intention to some degree, as far as where you're at. So like even you saying like ritual, practice, ceremony, like we're talking about casting a spell, saying a prayer, like dig deeper into that for me, because I think that that's something that's so interesting in what we do, is breaking apart our words and then, you know, how they're used sometimes villainously. Like if you say a spell, somebody's like, oh, you're a witch, like, and then that's done. But that's not really, I mean, people are saying spells every day whenever they're repeating the same phrases over and over again. So
I'm a writer and I love words. And as I've been diving into what would create a spell, it's the same, it's that rhythm. Right. And, you know, I think that our quote prayer has devolved into rambles when we do decide to stop and try to focus.
Right.
We have no focus tools at all around that. You know, we think that the only time we can tap in maybe is if we are at church, or, you know what I'm saying? We have those, and it's very separate from our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, in the world of witchcraft, those articles are the same articles that are used across every tradition, like the candle, incense, water.
Yeah, right. It's just
plants.
Using them with an intention that most people don't tend to get it.
Unless they're in church.
Yeah.
Right? So, you know, and the way we choose to put our words together in that space so that we're conscious of what we are saying. And we're conscious of what we did say.
Right.
You know, I've spoken to people, I spent hours in prayer, and I'm like, oh, well, what were you praying about? And they don't know.
Yeah. Right.
They don't know. And I'm like, well, if I were going to talk to the president, or I were going to talk to the
main guy in charge, I would know what I was going to say.
I would be walking in with some intention. Right? So that's what I'm trying to bring back.
Okay.
Above templates.
Yeah, exactly. We're not claiming to be any of these things. It's a culmination of this wisdom from all
of it.
Yeah.
Right? You know, so when we can start lighting a candle and say, you know, you're lighting a candle for, like in church, you'd light a candle for a loved one that may be passed. Or you'd light a candle for somebody who needed help.
Yes.
Or, you know, that's how we would use it. In my home, I have a candle lit for an intention almost all the time.
Yeah.
Right?
I've started doing that, and it really does make a big difference.
Yeah. You've got a lot of elements there, right? You know? So
When you say that, the smoke, what is that?
And
What
the
you're
fire,
talking?
right? And
Usually it's a patchouli candle or
the
something
scent,
like that.
yeah.
Yeah, the scent of it matters, and just filled with so much intention.
And I've found like times when I'm really processing, I love to go build a fire.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is another thing that people have done across eons whenever they're trying to connect to something deeper than themselves. They build a fire, they stare at the fire, they look at the universe,
and watch the flames like react to your energy.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh my gosh, that's been a cool thing to witness.
Cool thing. Like that anger or whatever it's in your body fuels those flames in a contained way. You're like, oh, that is a power.
Yeah.
And, across tradition, our intentions were fueling our emotions were fueling our intention, right? And in prayer, in spell work, in incantations, poetry, music lyrics, there's always an emotion fueling that delivery and the outcome of what a person is going to feel on the other side of that. And that is the energy we're trying to embody as we put these words together. Right now, it's a lot easier to stay for us humans, pulling that indigenous piece in where we've got a rhythm to what we're saying.
Yeah.
So that it sticks in your head. And then every time you walk by that candle burning, you're like, and the words
come to you.
Roam, yeah. And then you can take a bow and walk on. And you're fueling that prayer or incantation every time that attention is focused on it.
And that could be, directed, that energy's coming back to you. It's going to someone you're thinking about. It's going to the collective, whatever that intention is.
Whatever the intention is.
Set to be. Well, I'm even thinking about our Temazcal ceremony, I guess, ritual. What would you call that?
That was a ceremony in Temazcal.
So we did in Mexico on a retreat last year. We did the Temazcal ceremony, and that was led by a local shaman.
Mm-hmm.
And she was super talented, spent hours that morning setting up the space for us to even walk into it. So what would you call what she was doing there, and how did you...
Sang.
Sang.
Yeah. Like, I mean, that's what we need to start embodying again. That intention. Like, she had the fire going, burning away all that was not going to be serving, and it was receiving what was going on inside to burn it away and release with the smoke, right?
Yeah.
The rocks, all the elements were present.
And we were doing some chanting in there as well. To move energy around and focus. Focus our intention for whatever that opening was. So I don't know. The Temazcal is like a sweat lodge essentially. So
she had,
we had different periods of time,
different stones, remember, and pieces of what else? What were we picking up that we were adding to the fire?
It was the stones, but we were kind of drawing on them, writing on them with these charcoal pieces.
It was amazing. And,
But that's even that piece of the repetitions of words we were saying, that was an incantation or, a chant to some degree that,
it was like
the
prayer. They called it prayer.
Yeah.
Right?
And so that's...
The natives call it prayer.
Yeah.
Right? Most do. And, we've set, it is interesting that throughout time, the recognized miracle workers have been men, the ones that are recognized. And the females have been labeled witches.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to burn away.
That's so true, yeah.
Right? All the females that had these blessed powers and the gift to heal were cast away and diminished and labeled as witches and burned at the stake. Well, we're here. And, I've recognized as I was studying, I was like, a lot of the things that are very innate to me, I obviously had experienced in many lifetimes through those practices that I, because of Christianity, would never even look at or think about in my younger years.
Right.
But was I drawn to the herbs? Was I drawn to the incantations?
Yeah.
Was I drawn to casting that circle? Yes, I was.
Yeah, right. I think that connection with nature kind of changes some of the perspective, because that's not really present in the Catholic Church, is it? Or is it? I don't know. I grew up Baptist, which, that was a ride, but like, I feel like that there was no nature incorporated at all, other than the body of Christ.
they rose humans above.
Yeah.
Right, which set them apart from nature, which is the huge chasm between, all the indigenous and witchcraft and religion.
Yes.
Right. That is the huge piece, is the elemental factors and the recognition that everything here has life and everything here has a voice. And just because you're a human and walk on two legs does not make you more powerful or more intelligent or more anything. What's happening is we're destroying the earth.
Yeah. And we're learning that, and how quickly learning now how sentient everything is.
Everything.
From the plants, animals we thought had no brain at all. It's like, actually, maybe they did have some other sensory way of interpreting things. So yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Nature's its own teller of, it has some of the same patterns too. It's like got all the elements, like even the birds have their own little songs.
Yeah, they're all operating within the cycle of life, and humans are not.
Yeah.
Right? We're trying to control the cycles of life.
Yeah.
Right? As we do. And I think that a call in all of this is that all needs to be honored. Right? The earth, the trees, as equals. As equals, right? All people. We are all equal. Right. And I think it's interesting, when I landed in Mexico during COVID, probably 2 days in, a shaman shows up and he goes, "You're here for the plants," right? And in that, he was, interested in my experiencing peyote and ayahuasca. And I was not called to do that. But I was called to the plants. And I spent most of the time I was there, in the jungle, just with the plants.
Yeah.
And, came back and we started amplifying that voice that I have blessed to always hear, and being able to share it out so that there is a recognition. These beings do have a voice.
Yes.
Just because we as humans can't hear it.
Right.
That's it.
They're healing, they're teaching, they're doing things.
Always.
Yeah.
Right.
The plants are incredible.
And, to witness Bera's vocabulary and the choice of instruments change with who walks in the room during a day of work is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And she will totally change.
That's incredible.
Right? For what that person needs when they walk in the room. And, hello.
Yeah.
Humans are most often thinking about themselves.
Right. Yeah.
So.
But they're bringing in though, ancient wisdom.
Yeah.
That's what's so cool. So, and one of the things we're talking about shamans and these enlightened beings essentially as spiritual teachers and guides. So Buddha, Jesus, how, I guess, would someone, if they're looking for a spiritual teacher, know, because there is not a lot of people out there that look at everything and have that holistic view. So how should they know who to get as a guide if they're trying to be more understanding, I guess, of all traditions and of all, not pigeonhole themselves?
Well, I think it's important to know a little bit about a lot of things, right? So that you can come into your own space, right? I think that it's important to recognize that if somebody is saying something that your body rejects, get up and walk away. right? Because, you know,
should you ask yourself why your body is rejecting it?
well, I mean, you know, a lot of current spiritual teachers are teaching, you know, are speaking of suffering.
Yeah.
And not growth
in the club.
Right?
Yeah.
They're speaking of sin. They're speaking of, right, these pieces that are very belittling to what humans can be, right? And if your body is rejecting that, step away, right? And link arms with people who are of like mind, right? You know, I studied with some powerful people around the globe, and you know, not everybody is 100% right all the time.
Yes.
And you may have different thoughts on certain things, but if you're finding a level of truth and authenticity there, stay put for a while.
Okay. And so that's like a good way for people to learn. When you're saying know a little bit of everything, maybe they stay in that for a little bit, but with the intention that they're going to learn something else. Like, what's some ways that people can kind of make sure that they keep their mind broad if they are staying in a space that maybe is, you know, niche, and they're trying to learn about that piece of it, you know? How can they broaden that perspective and make sure that they're not pigeonholing themselves? That's the best word that's coming to my mind.
Well, I think that, you know, just like anything else you study, you're going to have bits and pieces that ring really true for you.
Right.
And you're going to hang on to them, right? Just like casting that sacred circle. I've been doing that for years. Like, I don't know why I started doing it. Like, it just, I started doing it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then people got weirded out that I was doing it, right? And I quit doing it. And then I step into this place of witchcraft that I really didn't know anything about, really.
Right.
Right? And was like, oh, I feel like I'm in Catholic Church. Like,
yeah.
The whole rituals of everything, and, you know, the incantations, and, you know, So
yeah, maybe
the only thing that's missing there is earth.
Yeah, right.
Right? You know, the most of the religion are denying earth. And that's what I find with the indigenous and witchcraft, is that it's all encompassing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
Right? And we have to recognize as well, like, you know, the master healer that Christianity is based on, right? He used what was around him. He'd mud, he'd spit on it, like he picked flowers, like whatever was necessary within his environment.
Right.
Right?
To amplify.
And the focus. And most often the focus was for the recipient.
Yeah.
So that they could see these actions to be able to process healing occurring.
Yeah. Right.
Right? So there's a culmination in all of that. Right? Because each one of those is bringing energy to the table as well.
Right. Yeah, I think even just asking, you know, one of the foundational questions is like, what's different? But like maybe even asking like, what is the same that I'm seeing across templates?
That's really the most important
piece.
What is the same?
Yeah.
Right? Because if we've got opposing traditions such as witchcraft, Christianity, you know, Judaism, around the bend, using specific articles and items within their ceremonies.
Yes.
And they're putting their words together in a similar way. And, you know, their intention around that is complete and utter focus. Emotions pouring into those words. Those are the kind of things we hang on to, right? Because that works, or otherwise it wouldn't have been kept. Because all religion was formed from a person like going, okay, I like this, but I don't want to have to do this part.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna so let's make a new religion.
But even you saying like, oh, I don't want to do this part, like maybe that was something that just didn't ring with them, or like help them to focus or
well, and as long as we didn't have to make blame and say, oh, you're wrong for that,
Yeah.
right? What I'm saying is if we can find the positives and the commonalities between all of that, we know they kept that because it worked.
Right. Yeah. So,
see where I'm going?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So those are the things that we're trying to pull together to say, hey, like you're in charge of your own spiritual growth. You're in charge of creating your space that is sacred.
Yeah.
Right? Have a place in your home.
Yeah.
Right? Where that is your sacred space. And when you walk into it, it's like walking into that energy.
Yes.
Because I don't care who you are. If you walk into a church of there is an energy that has been
reverence that they purposefully created.
Yeah.
For you to walk into.
Yeah. And you can create that for yourself. The master was anything I can do, you can do.
Yeah.
They took that part out.
Yeah. Right. So it's like you can create that for yourself and kind of light your own way by having this clean space to continually come to and make those observations, essentially.
Observations and, your
just do the work that you want to do. Yeah.
Like the indigenous, they had nature. Forever, the Missouri River was my church. I would go sit at the river and say, show me what I need to see.
Yeah.
Right? Because that connection to that roaring, I have trouble saying.
Roaring river.
Yeah. That roaring water was very powerful to me.
Yeah.
Right? So, when we can tap into nature at the same time, we're going to tap into that so much easier.
Right. Yeah. The greatest teacher of it all, I think.
Yeah. And I always know I'm right. I'm like connected in when nature starts playing. If a hawk is going to dance with me.
Yeah.
Right? If the geese are going to line up.
Yeah.
There you go. Right? They're recognizing.
Yeah.
That I'm not trying to be separate.
Yeah. Even in Colorado, when we were doing some work there at our retreat, and there's like a pack of wild turkeys that just drops by looking at us like, we see what you're doing. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So it's just like that observation and like noting and then just staying true to who you are by realizing your own body, what rings with you, what doesn't. What do you have questions about? Ask them. See what's the same. See what's different.
Yeah, an experience.
Yeah.
I think we have been taught that whatever we were given in kindergarten should be our concept for spirituality for our lifetime.
Yeah.
And I'm saying explore.
Yeah.
Understand what the natives are doing because, as I traveled around the world, our natives are called starseeds. The rest of the tribes I interact with, right, called themselves indigenous tribes. They refer to our Native Americans as starseeds.
Who's they?
All the tribes I've interacted with.
So the tribes call each other starseeds?
No.
They call
all
themselves.
Other tribes outside of Native Americans have referred to our Native Americans as starseeds.
Okay.
And we have diminished everything that they knew. And we need to relearn it. Right? We all have Native American, well, not all. Many of us have Native American blood within our veins. We have African American blood within our veins. We have white. We have all the colors pouring through our veins. We have to remember who we are. Right? And what we have connecting in, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And link arms around that because
that's what's going to
change the
powerful. That's going to change your life. That's going to change the world. That's going to help the collective. And we really need that.
We need that. Yeah, absolutely.
We're holding out this torch to light the way.
Yeah. So come join us, right?
Join us.
And we want your voice. It's not like there's a high priestess in this space. We're all learning from each other.
Right. Exactly.
Right? You know, I've studied a lot. I'm going to share, and I want to hear your voice.
Word.
I want to hear what you're bringing to the table, because we're all learning from each other.
Right.
And remembering what we have lost. I want to finish with this. When I was in New Mexico, before I went to Mexico, again, you know, the plants were calling me, and I was awakened one morning and told to go to the top of this mountain. And I pack up my dogs. I just get in the car with my cup of coffee. I drive to the top of the mountain, and the fires had just come through. And I mean, it was just instant tears pouring out of my eyes. And I got out and I was like, okay, well, I guess they want me to pray and meditate within this space. And I went to sit down on one of the trees, and it was still hot.
Yeah.
It was that recent of a burn.
Right.
Right. And we have to stop that. They are our breath. Like, it's the short-sightedness of how we've been operating as white humans needs to stop. Yeah. The trees give us breath.
Yep. Absolutely. We'll end on that. Yes. We do hope that y'all come to join us at the Trauma to Enlightenment Academy. We're doing a lot of fun things there. So stay connected and have a great day.